Hey friends, welcome back to Scale with Clarity. I'm Brooke Cunninger, and today's episode is one I wish I had when I first left corporate and started building my own business. I'm sitting down with Katie Turner of Kate Turner Marketing, and we're talking about the things so many smart, capable consultants struggle with. Your work is solid, but your pipeline is erratic. Katie breaks down why it's usually not a you problem. It's usually a messaging and alignment problem, and how to translate what you do into language buyers recognize, trust, and most importantly, act on. If you've ever found yourself over explaining on sales calls, attracting the wrong leads, or wondering if you need to pivot again, this conversation is for you. Katie, hi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Before we started recording, I was talking to Katie. We were talking about what she does, and I'll let you introduce yourself in a second. But it's like almost this is self-fulfilling for me too, because the message and like what everyone needs to hear and what you're helping others do, I'm like, it's one of the hardest things, I think, coming from corporate and how you talk about yourself, and then you start your own business and how you really need to go to market and what that messaging needs to be. So I'm really excited to have you on here and dive in. And I think we could go much longer than the 30 minutes we talked about. But
That's all right.
will you introduce yourself and just talk about your business now?
Sure. So I am Katie Turner. My company is called Kate Turner Marketing. Kind of
How did you come up with that?
So creative. But really what I help my clients work on is like connecting their strategy and their story together. It's about messaging. A lot of times people come to me, they always come to me and they're like, I think my messaging is not working and my pipeline is really unpredictable. I get referrals. Some of them are good fits. Some of them are not good fits. I'm like spending a lot of time talking to bad fit leads, or like I have a great conversation with somebody who I think is going to be an awesome fit, and then they just vanish. And I think that there's something wrong in the way that I'm explaining my business, or something's not clicking with my messaging. And they're usually right, but they're the
You're right. You need
problem
to
is
change.
usually
Yep.
something a lot deeper than that. So that's where the strategy part of it comes in. So the first thing that I'll work on with them is really figuring out, what are you actually selling? Like, do you have a good understanding of what it is that you're selling and what your offer is? And then from there, define, okay, who needs that thing? So, which is, I think, the reverse of how most people do it. They're like, well, let me pick a target audience and then sell something to
Yeah.
them. No, I'm like, pick something that you're going to sell, and then
Figure out where
figure
to
out
go.
what audience that makes sense for, and then where you're going to find those people. And then we work on the messaging that's going to lock all of those things into place and connect those dots so that you can tell a really solid story that makes sense, that your buyers understand, that it's in their language. And that is what makes your pipeline more predictable, because you're telling a clear story.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I wanted like every step of that. I have like multiple questions that you just walked through. I love that because I think, and I'll use myself example, but like the solopreneur, the service-based entrepreneur who maybe is just starting out or, early stage, early couple years.
Hmm.
How do you even know though that it's the product or the service that you're offering just isn't needed? It's not, there's no market fit for it, or it's how you're selling it. Like how like, have you faced that? And I think that's what a lot of people going on their own are like, they pivot and they pivot and they pivot when actually, to your
Yeah.
point, it might be their messaging.
Yeah. They pivot and they pivot. And I mean, I'm guilty of the same thing myself. And I
Yeah.
think
Me.
that it's not always that what you're selling is not is not something that somebody needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's more that you're trying to sell something to the wrong audience, or you're like, there's
Mm-hmm.
a misalignment there in the way that you're talking about the problem and the way that your buyers are actually experiencing it.
Yeah.
So it is a messaging problem. And, for service-based businesses, like, everybody does the same kind of thing. It's like an HR professional is the same as every other HR
Yeah.
professional. A financial advisor is the same as every other. A CFO is the same as every other. Like, there are fundamental things that you deliver that your buyers or your prospects are going to expect from you. And so, it's really easy to default to this very generic language about how you talk about yourself
Yeah.
and what you say you do. And, that is essentially what creates the problem. There's no real way for people to um, really understand you and
Yeah.
really like differentiate you out
Yeah.
of the crowd or the sea of other people who are
Yeah.
just
Wh-
like you. So,
Yeah.
messaging is the problem, but it's also sometimes that, like, we as professional services providers, like I'm in marketing,
Yep.
you're a CFO,
Yep.
like you've got HR providers, whatever. We know so much and we know how to do so many
Yeah.
things that we try to talk about it to like all of the things to all of the
Yeah.
people, and that never works.
No.
And, back to your point, like this is something that I think I struggled with when I was coming out of the corporate world and going into consulting,
Yeah.
is that I had been in roles where I was like the director of marketing or the VP of marketing or whatever. And I was very much like a generalist. And I had a lot of people who I could like, go to for underneath me who were
Yep.
specialists in the things that needed to be done or whatever. And so I came out into the world as a consultant and I'm like, well, I
So
can
many
do all of this.
everything. Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to figure out how to sort of distill all of my like professional experience and
Yeah.
knowledge into one singular kind of problem that I could solve
Yeah.
that my buyers really resonated with and understood. So it was this process of kind of figuring out like it's not product market fit. Like there is everybody needs marketing, everybody needs HR, everybody needs financial help. Like it's not product market fit, it's more like messaging and problem and audience fit, like just getting the pieces aligned that you feel confident talking about what you do
Yeah.
because you're leaning into an aspect of your expertise that you really love. And you're talking about it in a way that's also in the language that your buyers experience and understand their problem so that they're like, oh, she gets it.
I see
She
myself
knows
in
what I
her.
mean. And she's the one out of all of these other marketing consultants or whatever that I need to talk to.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked to the point of leaving corporate too, because that so resonates with me. And I think I talk a lot about this because, and let me know if you disagree, but you're in a corporate job, in a W-2 job, and the title, like you said, it's usually director, VP, you climb that ladder. And to me, that was all anyone needed to know because it was kind of all encompassing and I had a real ego around it. And it took me a long time when I left, to your point, was like, I can do all of this, but it actually hurt me in so many ways because the problem needs to be really specific that you're talking to. And
Hmm.
I thought by solving a ton of things, like I was really proud of that. But to your point, instead of like, I'm the, VP of the finance department or your, marketing group, it is what is the problem, which can be I help in the finance world. Like I help small startups raise their first round of funds, like very
Hmm.
specifically. And I think it's not just the problem when you start, it's like such a different way to think about it. But you said this too, the add-on is the problem and then who it's for, because you can help again raise funds for a second round fund. It's a bigger company or only service-based businesses. And not only thinking of that, but I think for me, the hardest was like, what do I want? Like, because you realize you do have so much, but it like accepting that that's actually hurting you and narrowing it down to like what you want. Was that like the same
Yeah.
process for you? And do you see that in others?
Definitely. I mean, I think that that's, you're right. Like when you're in the corporate world, your title and the company that you work for sort of just give you this
Yeah.
built-in credibility,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then you leave and you try to go out on your own and that credibility doesn't follow you. So you have to, and it's not you don't build credibility as a solopreneur the same way that you build credibility in the corporate space
Yeah.
because nobody cares like who you worked for or like your ex
No,
whatever
I want to see your
company.
references. Nobody says that about like back to
Nobody
your
says that,
job.
right?
Yeah.
Like they just want to know that you understand their problem
Yeah.
clearly and that you have a process for fixing it.
Yeah.
Right. And that you're going to take it off their plate and make it easy for them. And so it's a whole different way of thinking about how you sell credibility and how you become believable and trustworthy in a trust based, relationship
Yeah.
based business. And for me, that was definitely a learning process. Like I had to kind of bring myself down and really evaluate for myself. Okay, I've had, at the time, it's like I had had like 18 years of marketing leadership experience. And out of all of that, like what was the area for me that
Yeah.
felt the most like that I was the most passionate about, I was the most interested in, that I felt like I was the best at. And once I landed on that and said, okay, if this is where I want to focus is like on, helping businesses tell their stories better
Hmm.
and connecting their strategy to their story, then how do I like build a process around that?
Yeah.
Like how do I operationalize doing that for customers or for clients? And then once I have that in place, okay, now how do I actually message this and sell this in a way that's going to make sense for people? I have always leaned into the idea that like your customers are your best
Yeah.
storytellers. And if you're not listening to their words, then you're missing the whole point, right? Like you can't just go out and say, well, we do innovative, blah dee who, whatever. Nobody cares about your like SAT words. They just want to know, you know, I see that you have this problem and I know how to fix it and I understand the space that you're living in and the specific
Yeah.
challenges and nuances that you have in your words. Like just be clear about it. Um so that was something that I had to figure out. And I'm a marketing person. I do this. It was really hard for me too. So
Same.
it's like
Like, yeah.
I look at that and I'm like, wow, this was challenging for me. Like, of course it's going to be hard for other people, especially when they have no idea like where to even start thinking about that because they weren't like raised up in this
No.
mindset.
And I
So
think I'm so glad we're voicing this too, because I think it's common to then go to the confidence thing where you're like, I'm just not good at this. When you see, to your point earlier, the pipeline isn't coming and you're putting yourself out there, and a lot of people turn away. And I think it's a little freeing. And I've been leaning into this in the last, I'd say 6 months. So that's why I'm so glad our paths crossed. But I'm like, actually, maybe it's not me, it's not the service, it's just how I'm talking about it, and it can be really like not a fun test, but it just relieves a lot of the, like, anything personal. It's like, I gotta talk about it differently, and so I know that that's a test and it's iterative, but I guess back a question for you is, uh, I can understand for businesses that are established and they've had a bunch of clients and maybe they need to tweak their messaging, and so they know what works and what doesn't. If you're earlier on, how do
mhm,
you know? Because what I'm hearing from you, and tell me this isn't the right way, is like, we need to talk a little in your ideal client's language. And you need to say
yeah,
like really what they're struggling with and what's that problem that is like prime for them. And sometimes we don't know. We're making an assumption because we're going from, say, a W 2 job in these big corporations. Now we want to do it for like mid market or maybe a smaller
yeah.
business. Like, or do you make an assumption and then test it? Like, how should that work like earlier on for someone's just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the very beginning stages, it's a little bit of making assumptions and testing them out, but a
Yeah.
lot of it is just like you have to have as many conversations as possible, with your target audience. I mean, if you or about the problem that you're solving. So, I think one of the things that I did early on that helped me kind of figure it out is like, first off, I did not come from a B2B professional services background, right? Like I had worked in higher education, I had worked in nonprofits, I had worked in healthcare, I'd worked in a lot of other kinds of corporate jobs, but I had not worked for like, small size B2B professional services businesses. Okay.
I love that you're saying that
And
because yes, keep going.
yeah. And so for me, like it was a bit of effort I had to put in to really understanding the problems of that audience. And, it's just having conversations, asking questions like, what are you really dealing with? What is the biggest challenge for you? Like doing a lot of networking, like doing a lot of one-on-ones, like getting into different groups and communities or Slack groups or whatever you can to try and get more in front of your audience and literally just listening to what they say. And then once you start doing the work and hearing more from what your client, you're not going to be perfect for the first time you go out and do it. Like you're not going to have it figured out with the first or second or even fifth client that you necessarily have. You're going to be learning from all of those
Yeah.
experiences and then using that to better kind of put together your messaging. So it's like when I like to work with my clients, I feel like the best place for me to come in is when you've had a little bit of that under your belt where you've done a few and you have some work
Yeah.
that you can look back
Yeah.
on and reflect on.
It's
You
like you
can look back and understand, like, what did I do really well with this? Where did this tend to fall off? Why was this client a great fit or not a great fit? Or this engagement ended well and this one didn't? Like, and we can start to
yeah.
evaluate the common threads
Yeah.
across all of that, and then get into a little bit of like, validating your understanding of the problem and stuff like that so that you have a better way to actually go out and do that
Yeah.
market testing.
I'm the same. Like, finance again is my vertical, I guess, and the more data you have, the better. I mean, because that's what
Right.
you about. We're doing forecasts, and if you're just starting off, it's really hard. And it's honestly, it's all about testing and iterating. And then as you go, you really have hard data that you can look at your existing clients and customers, just like you said too. So similarly, and I like the point you were making, even if you're earlier stage or just starting out. I think one of the important points there that you mentioned is I think we have this idea that we have to have it all the answers. Because and again, it probably comes from like maybe a former job where you're like, I can help you in all this stuff and that is so people can recognize that right away when you're just like, oh, I can answer this. And to your point, asking the questions, you had very different, industries you just mentioned working in. That doesn't minimize the functional expertise you have, but there still doesn't
Right.
mean that you're just going to automatically know what that specific company in that industry is dealing with. So the questioning, I think that was like a learning for me that doesn't negate your value. It actually sometimes elevates it because you're getting to know them better, and then you're pulling important information there into the back of your mind of like, this is how I should talk about it next time, and know that it's like
Yeah.
an evolution, right? Like it
Yeah.
it's gonna evolve in 6 months, 9 months, year, 2 years down the road, you're gonna get better and better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that you're right. Like the functional discipline or the functional knowledge that you have of like, this is how marketing works, or this is how finance works, or this is how HR works, or whatever. That functional knowledge applies across
Yeah,
like every business,
yeah,
but the specific patterns of the way that the problems and the solutions show up for different types of businesses at different stages or sizes or industries or, business models or whatever are different. And so having those conversations and actually doing the work with, your first few dozen or whatever, however many clients it takes, just gives you that knowledge. And I think that you just have to go into it knowing that unless you're one of those like unicorns who leaves a corporate job in a very niche industry and then is able to start a consulting
'cause there's a
practice,
huge need around, yeah,
solving the exact problem for the exact same industry, whatever, like you're just going to have to like stumble through it
yeah,
for a
yeah,
while. And that's fine, but ask a lot of
yeah,
questions, and really like recognize like when you're having conversations, like you're having a conversation, whether it's a networking conversation or a conversation with a prospect or a sales call or whatever, observe and recognize when people are leaning back and when they're leaning in. Like
yeah, the
feel
physical,
the energy difference in the room of like what people are responding to,
yeah,
and notice those things and write them down if
yeah,
you have to, like
yeah,
because that's where you can start to understand how to shape your messaging. But, that's what I help people do.
yeah,
Like it's like it's sometimes it's so hard to see that from for yourself. You look in a mirror and you're always going to see like a bit of a distorted image. So you have to have somebody from the outside who can help extract all of that stuff like out of your head and ask the right questions and come at it from a different perspective and then throw it back to you to say, does this sound right? Like, is
yeah,
this who you are? Like, and then go through that kind of iterative process of figuring it out until you get the messaging and the
yeah.
strategy where you want it to be.
I love that, and you're absolutely right. I think we can all be, really great at it, but for ourselves, I think there's a natural tendency to talk about what you do, how you do it, and not
Hmm.
talking to the other person. It's like really is a different language. So the fact that you can
Yeah.
come in and kind of hear that, but then flip it into the new language is really a unique skill set, and one that like is so important because you've got to talk in your customer's language and not in yours of like what you're doing. And because
Right.
that's what you live in every day is like how you're delivering, but that's not what the
Yeah.
customers are living in their problems. So
It's like that. It's like the curse of expertise, right? Like, so much about what you do that it just feels like common sense for you. And you can go into all of the jargon and all of the technical details about your process. And meanwhile, your prospect is sitting there like, I'm a
Yeah.
little lost,
Yeah.
right? Like I just want like, my numbers to add
Yes.
up or my, people to click on my ads or like
Yes.
whatever it is that they're looking for. And so you always need to be putting it back into their language. I like to tell people that a very simple way to kind of think about this is not, it's like you don't talk about your process, right? Like you understand what your customer's problem is. You've got to talk about their problem and you've got to really understand how they're experiencing it and the specific context in which they're experiencing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That only comes from like experience, knowledge, conversations, direct, like one-on-one kind of research. But you have that, and then you've gotta talk about, like, not like, "Here's how we solve it," but, like, what outcomes do they want? What capabilities do they gain from this? What benefits do they walk away with from it, Like, I don't care how the sausage is made. I just want it on my plate,
Yeah.
like, with my spaghetti,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Do it behind the
you
scenes, but this
know?
is what the outcome is I want. And I think two things. One, that's it can be really freeing because you oftentimes think you need to. I mean, everyone I've talked to over delivers when they first start. You over deliver and you like fire hose your customer with stuff they don't need because you think that, and it can be really clarifying and like like stress relieving to say like they actually just wanted, like to your point, something that we think is maybe so easy or we take it for granted,
Yeah.
but that's the real value unlock. And you're like, oh, I could have just done that and it would have actually been even better. And so getting to know that is really great. And the other thing that you mentioned that is worth noting is it's all the questions and the interviews and just hearing back from clients and potential clients. And oftentimes I know, because I'm in it too, is that can feel like you're not, the ROI isn't there. But oftentimes it's all those early conversations. And honestly, once even you get a product market fit, continuing to talk to your customers, even when it's not a specific sale. But all of that data is like planting the seeds that in 6 months' time you're just learning and learning. And it's just like, I feel like that's when you're in the grind of entrepreneurship, but you
Yes.
don't see how much you're learning and you're evolving and you're changing, but like, you need to do that. Like definitely in the first stage, but then continue it on as you go.
Yeah, 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 and I think that you're absolutely right, and especially too, like, I think that a lot of us, like, you especially if you're coming out of corporate,
Yeah.
right? You might have this idea in your head of what marketing is because you've been in a corporate job
Yeah.
and you know that
Yeah.
they do advertising and they have a social media team and they do this and they do that. And they've got all these wonderful marketing materials. And you come out of it and you're a solopreneur and you're like, well, I need to do marketing. So I need to have all of these, one pagers and brochures and social media posts and
Yes.
a,
Beautiful
fancy
website and
website
lead
and
magnet and
ads and like you think of marketing as like those tactics and deliverables,
yeah.
but for it's completely different for a solopreneur. Like your marketing
Yeah.
is literally all of the conversations that you're having. All of your networking, your one-on-ones, the podcasts that you might appear on,
Hmm.
or presentations that you might
Yeah.
give, or workshops that you might host, or be part of a panel, or whatever. Like all of these organic kind of business development, what you might kind of conflate as like business development sales activities. Like for the solopreneur, like it's all one and the same when it comes to marketing
Yeah.
because that is how you are generating business. And that is not, it's your long-term like positioning
Yeah.
or um it is the marketing because it's all of those conversations like you said, these are how people are going to remember you.
Yeah.
You're going to build these relationships over time, and a conversation that you had 6 months ago
Yeah.
with somebody who you might not have even thought of as a prospect, but then you like kind of stayed in touch with them and you run into them somewhere else and then they remember the thing that you did, and like that's like how you end up getting
Yes.
like some referral that kind of comes out of nowhere and you're like, "Oh, I didn't even remember that I met
And you
that
trace
guy."
back the lines of where that
Right,
came
and
from.
you
You're like,
trace
oh,
it
that
all
was like
back
the
and you're like,
random
"Okay, that's crazy."
conversation. Yeah.
But that is marketing, right? That is your marketing, and that's why I feel like it's so important to get your messaging
Yeah.
clear because you're going to be repeating that messaging in every conversation that you have, and you want it to be clear, memorable,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
It has to make narrative sense. Like, here's the thing that I do, the offer that I have, or the service that I provide. which directly fits with the audience that I'm offering it to, like it's actually something that they need, and the outcome that they get makes sense for
Yeah.
them, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like it has to all fit together. And I see it all the time sometimes with B2Bs where that breaks down, right? Like you say, like, hey, we provide like risk mitigation or whatever.
Yeah.
And our audience is um solopreneurs and consultants. And you're like, well, do solopreneurs and consultants need risk
Yeah.
mitigation? I don't know that they
Do
do.
they use
Like,
that term even if they do? Like, do they know? Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Or like, okay, we offer risk mitigation for small to mid-sized businesses. Okay, that makes sense. But the outcome is greater efficiency. Well, no,
Yeah.
like what just happened here? Like
Yeah.
that wasn't,
Yeah.
those dots don't connect,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, People who are looking for risk mitigation are not looking for greater efficiency. They're looking for like greater compliance or, protection or something like that. Like it's not, the dots don't connect. And that happens, I think, a lot with like small solos, agencies,
Yeah.
boutique kind of firms and stuff like that, just because it is that curse of expertise. Like you can do so much
Yeah.
stuff and you see this big picture of like, yes, if you do all of this, you're going to end up with XYZ. But you're not telling a consistent story for your actual prospects.
Yeah.
And even if it's just like on a subtle level, like they're going to pick up on that disconnect and it impacts the way that they perceive you and the trust that they have. And it also is like what sort of just makes you blend into the noise of
Yeah.
everybody else.
Yeah. I like, and what comes up to so many things that you just said, but I think on this solopreneur or small service based business, which a lot of times it's our own, like it's we are delivering the service. Um, it can feel like the word strategy sometimes, some people I've talked to, like turns them off in that it feels inauthentic. Oh, I'm just trying to be this thing, but I want to be me, like this is who I am. And you said this earlier, which is really good, such a good point that marketing is more than just the materials. It's more than the strategy, but it is inclusive of the strategy. It is also who you are and how you come across. And that's your differentiator potentially is
Hmm.
I like working with Katie because she's really down to earth and she is a dog lover and whatever it is, they're resonating with you, right? So that is certainly part of what is an overall strategy and it's not making you different. So there's part of who are you and how do you want to come across naturally as you as an individual? But to your point, we've also got to tie it in and say, okay, but what is the language that my customer like deals in? And sometimes it can be innate and natural because we're delivering, we've always done it. We don't think about it, but that is actually what we're always doing. We're saying we're changing our tone. We're changing the way we say it depending on the person we meet. So if we just get a little more strategic, like you said, and that's what you help people with, right? Is like,
Hmm.
who am I talking to? What is the problem that they're really struggling with that I know? And I can be really empathetic towards that and use the words that I know that I can help them with. And I'm coming across as authentically me. Who is that? And you bring all that together into this package. And that's your unique proposition to the market. And that's
Hmm.
what sets you apart from everyone else. So I love everything you said too. And I just want to like double tap on the fact that like strategy is just taking everything you already know, but then putting it together so that it makes sense for the person and you essentially too, right? Like for
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly. And I think that strategy too, just to add to that, it's not like always like what you do. It's also strategy means what you're going to say no to.
Yeah.
Strategy is how you put
Such a good point.
constraints
Yes.
in place,
Yes.
right? Like because you want to be having conversations and this is the trap that I think every consultant or agency or whatever has fallen into at some point is that they want to say yes to everybody. Okay?
Yes.
They get on a call and they're like, "Yep, I can solve that problem. I can solve that problem. I can solve that problem." And maybe you can,
But
right?
should you? Yeah.
And kudos to you, right? But should you? Right? So strategy has to put the constraints in place. This is
I
what I'm going to say no to,
love that.
right? I
Yeah.
solve this kind of problem for this kind of person or business or whatever. And if it doesn't fall into that problem or person, then I'm not the right consultant for you. I'm not the right fit for you.
It's
And you have to be able to say no. I mean, I get on calls sometimes with people who they want to talk to me about marketing and they want to reach out, but like I figure out that like they're looking for something different, that I don't necessarily that I sure I could do it,
yeah.
but it's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
or they don't really have the problem that I solve. Maybe they have a strong narrative and a good messaging, and it's all kind of locked into place. And their problem is more about, execution or volume or something like that. Like, yeah, could I sit in my early days, would I've been like, "Oh yeah, I can
Yeah.
absolutely help you with that. Like
Mhm.
we're gonna do," but then I would just would have ended myself in a mess, like all like, whoa, with like what I'm trying to do. And so you have to strategically say no and identify like what kind of constraints you're going to put in place for you and how you make decisions on that. And that's only going to make you better. It's not about shrinking your business or like, you know, I think people get afraid to do that kind of stuff because they're like, well, I don't want to like potentially lose a client or lose a prospect or whatever. It's it makes you better. It makes you better at pattern recognition, at delivering the thing that you deliver well and getting more and more efficient at doing it over and over again. It's just
What's coming up
that was a hard lesson.
What's coming up for me, Katie, and I love it's what to say no to also, because that's a huge ego thing that all of us need to go through and release. And what's coming up for me is I'm like, you're essentially a therapist for all your clients. You are like digging under, like, who are you really as a business? Who do you actually want to work with? And who do you want to say no to? Like, all of that is like all that internal work that we all need to do starting a business. And I'm like, you're yes to all of that. But like, that's what you need to uncover so you can be really clear to others on like, this is what I say yes to, this is what I say no to, and this is the problem I solve. But it's like
Yes.
layers of like work to be done underneath that.
Yeah,
It's
it
so
is. It's
crazy.
like all of that. And then
Yes.
once that we get there, then we can start to put the story together around that, which is like, okay,
It's
perfect. We've
so,
landed on it. Here's your messaging. Here's how you're going to talk about it to different buyers at different stages of their decision making. This is who you're going after. Here's how we're going to use content to
yeah,
support that. This is what your go to market strategy looks like. This is how you're going to be discovered. This is how people are going to like, where they're going to go and find you when they're considering or thinking about it. And this is how you're actually going to convert them. And all of that is like locked together because we've made all these strategic decisions in the first place that have then become the foundation
yeah.
and the framework and the constraints around all of
Like,
that.
not that any of that is easy, but all those downstream steps you just said are like become infinitely easier and more clear when you
Yeah.
do that upfront body of work, which is
It's
just,
right.
it's like,
It's like everything after it sort of becomes inevitable,
yeah,
right?
like
It's just
exact.
becomes inevitable. Like, okay, I've made these decisions, so obviously this is
Yes,
how I say it, and obviously this is who I'm going to work with, and obviously this is the way that I'm going to deliver, and obviously this is like where I'm going to show up because I've figured all this stuff out,
really clear.
and yeah, I mean, so that's why, like I said in the beginning, people come to me and they're like, I feel like my messaging's not working, and yeah, you're right, it's not, but
Yeah,
in order to
seriously.
fix that,
We got a lot of work. We're going to do a lot of work
we got a
together.
lot of other things that we need to tackle.
Well, yeah, you said this at the beginning, but so then to bring it full circle, um, I know you've already said people come to you for marketing. There's stuff that is not in your wheelhouse anymore because you've really refined. How does someone
Mhm.
know that they do need to work with you? Like, what is happening in their business that they're like, now is the time that I need to reach out to Katie?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I would say that number one, it's kind of like a little bit of a stage of maturity. Like you've kind of gone through the ugly like initial phase of your business. You figured
Trying
out what it is that you do. You have a strong sense of exactly who and what and how
the
you want to
types of
work with
services and
clients.
products that you deliver to clients that they've paid you
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
And that's probably been an evolution. Like your business has evolved into this place where you feel like, okay, I've kind of got it figured out now, but now I just need to put the pieces together. That's the stage, I think, the mental stage where a lot of my clients are. I think that the symptoms that they might be experiencing are they're just struggling. Like they get on calls with people and they're over explaining. And they know it. Like they can see like their prospects like aren't really getting it. Or like sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. Or in other cases, I have clients who like they're not a solo anymore. They've hired some people or they have a little bit of a sales team or like whatever, and they're just not sure how to get everybody speaking from the same sheet of
Mm,
music.
yeah.
Maybe they've done some brand work, like they've had like the whole mission, vision, values this brand identity figured out, and they don't know how to operationalize it. That's a
Yeah.
big problem
Oh,
too
that's
that
true.
I
Yeah.
like. It's like we've done all this work and we have like this wonderful like mission statement and tagline and stuff, but like what do we do with it now other than put it on our like front door and our website? Like we don't know how to translate this into operational like language that our sales team can use, or
Yeah.
that we can use on LinkedIn, or that we can tell the story in our content, or whatever. Like we're just not quite there.
That
So
makes sense. And I gotta imagine too, it's playing out in terms of like we were talking about this earlier with ourselves as we were trying to figure ourselves out, but or our own businesses. But if you're not really clear in your messaging, you're going to be getting people on calls that are not the right fit. And like that should
yes.
be, and it should feel like you're probably like like you're grinding to get, you get people in and then it's the wrong fit. And that's always going to happen for sure. But like if that's
Yeah.
more often than not, that's probably a sign, right? That like, okay. And to your point, one of the causes of that as you grow and you're not the only one doing the selling, now you have others, like we got to make sure everyone's on the same page. And what is the real message? Like sometimes it can be
Yeah.
easier when it's just a party of one that we're like, okay, I can talk to that and pivot. But it's like kind of formalizing it, like you said, and getting the strategy around that. And that might be one of the
Yeah.
indicators too as they're coming
Yeah,
in.
and I mean, and I think, and it's like you get these like referrals that don't make sense for you. Like I can say like earlier when in my career, like I was getting referrals like, oh, like I have this person and they just need help with their social media stuff, and I'm like, That's not what I do," and it became obvious that this was happening because I wasn't clear in my own messaging about what exactly it is that I do. And then I had to actually go through the own my own exercise of like, well, what is it that I actually
Yeah.
do? Like, what are my constraints? What am I saying no to? How am I defining what my offer is, how that connects to my audience, and then the problem that it solves for
Yeah.
them?
That's really good.
And once you do that, you find that like you just get better explaining who you are. And then people who refer business to you are like, hey, like, I know that you work on messaging stuff, and I have this client who needs some help with their messaging.
You're like,
Okay, great.
yep,
Yep.
a
Send them my
hundred
way.
percent.
Right.
And
You're not getting the like random,
yeah.
for you as a CFO or whatever. I don't know if you do bookkeeping. People are like, oh, like, can you help this person with their bookkeeping or their payroll or
Yep.
like some other
Yep.
kind of
And
like
no.
randomly related
Yes and no.
process?
Yes, exactly. That does come
Yeah.
through, and I'm like, "No, it's not bookkeeping, it's very different." But that's a sign, like we said earlier, we always think like, "Oh, it's obviously, this is, it's under the marketing umbrella." That's not what I do, it's very different. But to others, and it's really a sign of the language they're speaking, they're like, isn't that like in the
Yeah.
numbers world?" I'm like, "It's very different." Or to your point, social
Yeah.
media is very different from brand strategy and like
Yeah.
so I
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I think that that happens too a lot of times because again, it's like goes back to that generic messaging where, you define yourself by what your category
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I'm a marketer
Yeah.
or I'm a, finance person or I'm a, HR
Yeah.
consultant or whatever, when actually what you really do is something very specific
Yeah.
within that segment.
Yeah.
But because you are too generic or too broad in how you're categorizing yourself, like I've really gotten away, personally, me, like I've gotten away from identifying myself as a marketing consultant because that brings to mind a lot of other things for people who have,
Like
their own notions of like what
asset
marketing means. So I've had
creation
to
and
get
yeah.
much more
Yeah.
specific about how I define myself so that I can filter out some of this like, the people who I don't are
Yeah.
just aren't a good fit for.
Well, like I said too, this conversation just brings up, I think for whatever stage of business you're in, it's maybe makes you feel a little better if you've been struggling with, pipeline or leads or they're coming in the wrong, and sometimes our brains can automatically jump to, especially entrepreneurs who have a ton of ideas. I need to create a different product or I need to pivot here. And if not say just because what you do is very important, but like if it can just be our operations are right, the product we delivered is right, our pricing is right, we just need to work on our, kind of branding, how we're going to market and how we're talking about it, which can be I guess really freeing because it's not like you have to change your whole business
Yeah.
model about that. So I love what you do. How can people find you? How would they find you if they are like, yep, I check
Yeah.
all those
So,
boxes?
I mean, you can go to my website, which is kateturnermarketing.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Katie Turner, or just search Kate Turner Marketing or Katie Turner or whatever. I will pop up. Those are the two best ways. I mean, I have a Substack. It's called The Marketing Fix.
that. More and more people are I've just been dabbling in Substack too, so, okay. That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
We will
So you could look for the marketing fix on Substack. But yeah, that's the best way to
perfect.
get a hold of me or just, send me a message on LinkedIn or send me an email, Katie@kateturnermarketing.com.
I love that. So I will put all that in the show notes. So anyone listening, reach out to Katie. You'll have all of that, your link and LinkedIn and website in the show notes. But thank you for sharing not only like tips for those of us in the trenches, but also based on your personal story, because it's like we've all been no shame in anyone, but it's the natural evolution of business. And so if you're
Right.
there, like this is the point when you need to start working on your messaging in the next evolution of what your business is
Right.
going
I
to be.
mean, and I
So
tell people all the time, it's like absolutely no shame. I am a marketer. I have struggled with my
same.
own marketing
Yes.
and my own messaging. I have gotten professional help for my own
Yes.
marketing and my own messaging as a marketing person.
Yes, which just
As
shows the
a
value of
consultant,
yeah,
I work with marketing
yes,
agencies and creative agencies who need help. So, like,
we all
no shame in this game,
hey,
right?
same
You did not go into business to be a messaging expert, and that's why people like me are around.
yes, I love that. Thank you for saying that because yes, 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 yes to all of that. Thank you for being on here. I'll put all that in the show notes. I just appreciate what you shared and just love our conversations every time we chat.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.